everyone, and welcome back to another episode here at the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola, very excited to be bringing to you a full day of news. So many massive stories, and thus we need a massive co-host. We got one. Fresh back on the road. Aida Rodriguez, how's it going? Welcome back to TDR.
Hey, what's up? Happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here, even though you're not here, you're over there. You're getting back out there and comediizing, right?
Yes, I'm actually in San Antonio, Texas. I'm performing here tonight. But yes, I'm on, and I don't care what that wacky governor of Iowa is saying. I'm wearing my mask, and I'm gonna make sure that I follow as many rules or whatever that I can to keep other people safe. But yes, I am back on the road.
Exactly. Well, look, as a gigantic fan of stand-up comedy, I'm glad that it's getting back to as long as it's safe and everything, that it's getting back. Just while I was producing the show, I was watching, I watched a little bit of Michelle Wolf, a little bit of a Dave Chappelle. Also like a little bit of relatively breaking news from yesterday. Obviously the comedy world lost Paul Mooney. Did you ever get the chance to meet or to work with Paul Mooney at all?
I did. I actually I did a tribute to him yesterday on my stand-up show. Mm-hmm. I did work with Paul Mooney, and I love Paul Mooney very much. He was a very big influence in my comedy. Those people who know my style of comedy know that I subscribe to the school of the Paul Mooney, George Carlin, and Marsha Warfield school, and it's a great loss for the comedy community. He was like the Magic Johnson of comedy. He helped a lot of people get those shots in there. He was a support for a lot of people. So I worked actually with Michelle Wolf and Dave Chappelle on Tuesday in New York. I did a show with them at the Stand. So it's really interesting how this week is unfolded.
Oh my God, can you imagine going out to a night of comedy and you've got Aida, you got Michelle Wolf, you got Dave Chappelle? That's amazing. What, you should have told me. I'd have flown out. This TDR thing, I can cancel it at a moment's notice. It doesn't really matter. I'll go. That would have been awesome. Well, anyway, I'm glad that you're getting back out there. I know that your fans have got to be thrilled to see you once again. That said, we've got a lot to talk about here as well, including a couple of updates on some of the stories we were talking about yesterday. The attempt to stop this sale of weapons from the US to the Israeli military. We've got updates on the January 6th commission, attacks going out, against people in our government for their commentary about what's happening in Palestine right now. We got a lot. We got some stuff. Hey, Ida's in Texas. We got some Texas news for you. So a lot's happening. But if you're watching this, regardless of where you are, please hit the like button, share the stream, let people know that we're live. And if you want to send us messages, we will respond if you have any questions. Also, if you have any questions and you want more in-depth answers, conveniently later on today at 12 p.m. Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern time, we will be having over at YouTube our monthly live Q&A for our tier 3 members. So if you are a tier 3 member on YouTube, every month we just hang out and we talk about stuff. Sometimes news, sometimes not. It's whatever you want, and that's happening later today. So consider becoming a member and getting access to that. That said, though, Aida, you ready to talk about some news?
Let's go.
Okay, let's do it. Everybody, dangerous. We're gonna do it anyway. Yesterday, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as well as some others, including Rashida Tlaib, Mark Pocan, Ilhan Omar, a few others, introduced in the House a resolution of disapproval to attempt to block the proposed $735 million in arms sales to Israel while the current campaign against Palestine is going on. The issue was that there's very little time for that block to actually happen. In fact, today is the last day it could happen unless one thing happened, which is a senator signed on. And it was a really open question as to whether any senator would do that. Now, there's a couple of senators that are pretty good. One you might know of that we had some hopes. And on the show, we asked you to hashtag withhold the treats, I think it was, and put pressure on Senator Bernie Sanders to sign on to this effort. And what do you know? Senator Bernie Sanders is preparing to introduce a resolution today disproving of the US sale of those precision-guided weapons to Israel, according to a draft obtained by the Washington Post. And he said in a statement, at a moment when US-made bombs are devastating Gaza and killing women and children, we cannot simply let another huge arms sale go through without even a congressional debate. I believe that the US must help lead the way to a peaceful and prosperous future for both Israelis and Palestinians. We need to take a hard look at whether the sale of these weapons is actually helping do that, or whether it is simply fueling conflict. Which is, I mean, that's kind of a funny statement, Ida. Like the weapons that we'd be selling them are the same sorts of weapons that are being used against Palestinian civilians right now. But hey, he signed on to it, and so the process can continue at least. What do you think?
So, like I said to you before this, it's interesting because works in the entertainment business. I have been warned over and over again not to speak on this because I want to make sure that I don't get accused of being anti-Semitic with people in the entertainment industry and I may lose work, which I think is anti-Semitic unto itself to say you can't speak about issues of the government in Israel is anti-Semitic unto itself. Just to make the not being able, and like we've had this conversation about Barack Obama, you without being criticized, and no one is beyond reproach and correction, and many things can be true at the same time. To Israel and I've been to Palestine, and when I was in Israel, I got bumped really hard by this man. He pushed me in a restaurant, and my tour guide so it said, sorry, he thinks you're Palestinian. And I said, so if I was Palestinian, that was okay. And she was like, I don't know if it's okay, but nothing would happen. And that made me feel really bad because nothing happened anyway. And I was an American for him doing that to me. But all that to say, I also saw a bunch of kids walking around with machine guns because they have to serve in the military. And a lot of people disregard while they're pushing on this war. There are a lot of Israeli mothers whose kids have to go out and fight these wars because they are part of the military as well. And so when you have root attitude towards this issue because you're not there, because there's a lot of people chiming in on this who've never been to Israel or Palestine, who don't understand the tension and the conflict and the history of the conflict, and are chiming in because a lot of things have happened to a lot of people around the world. There have been a lot of people who have experienced genocide and oppression, and none of it has been okay. And that being said, doesn't justify Palestinian children being interrogated at 11 years old, being pulled out of their beds in the middle of the night. And you know what, John, was really interesting? I met a lot of Israeli mothers who were working on finding peace and solution with Palestinian mothers because they are fed up with this governmental dance that affects the everyday people. And so when we have these conversations about Israel and Palestine, it is important, and we are fair in our conversation when we talk about Palestine being occupied and what's happening in part of the world. A lot of us we're always picking teams that we're liberals, we're conservatives, we're pro-Israel, anti-Israel. You don't have to be anti-Israel to be pro-Palestine. You can say it's okay for the children and the people of Palestine to have peace. And it's also okay to say that government is corrupt worldwide and Israel and Palestine are not exempt from that. And the people are the ones that always pay the price. So, I mean, if I get canceled, if I lose work, if people get angry, I've actually been in Ramallah and I've had to see people hide to have lunch with us because they don't want to get in trouble. We have to start using the word terrorist correctly. People that run towards machine guns with knives in their hands are not terrorists. People are just by cop. Like we have that's ill-informed and also dangerous because we don't know what's going on over there. And nobody is is calling for a second Holocaust for Jewish people. That's not what anybody's calling for when they say that Palestinian children and women and men and innocent young people should not be dying because government is corrupt.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about calling for peace is that it's peace for both sides. It's better. It can't be anti-Semitic to criticize the military actions of the current government of a country. If you can look, I mean, look, I'm not an expert. I've basically been nowhere in the world, but I have actually been to Israel. That said, I'm still not an expert on the area, but clearly this strategy sucks and it gets a lot of Israelis killed. If you want to continue that for a few more decades, that means a lot of Israelis being killed. I personally want that not to happen. I want peace on both sides. So I don't know, criticize me or Aida or Rashida Tlaib or Ilhan Omar if you want to, but we're still gonna advocate for our values, which also conveniently would produce less dead people on both sides. Now, really fast on the blocking of the weapons sale. Again, I wanna thank Senator Bernie Sanders for doing this. Hopefully now that he has done it, and he's gonna be attacked endlessly. Bernie Sanders, Jewish American, will definitely be criticized as an anti-Semite. Maybe him taking those slings and arrows will allow some other Democrats in the Senate to possibly sign on to it. We'll see. That said, it's probably not gonna stop the weapons from being sold. We didn't ask you to call the office because it would definitely work. We just think this is an important step. So lawmakers notably have never successfully blocked a proposed arms sale through a joint resolution of disapproval, which is what AOC and Bernie Sanders did. Although they have passed some in recent years. For instance, former President Donald Trump vetoed 3 resolutions passed by Congress in 2019 to stop arms sales benefiting Saudi Arabia and the UAE after the House and Senate voted to block the arms deals worth more than $8 billion. We cited those efforts by Congress during this week because it seemed crazy at the time to be giving these countries weapons that were then gonna be dropped on civilians. The exact same situation. And Congress very easily tried to block those. This is part of the momentum, I think. This is moving in the direction of having a Congress that reflects a little bit more of the changing American disinterest in supporting the mass slaughter of civilians internationally. Whether this succeeds or not, it almost certainly will not succeed. The weapons deal will almost certainly go through. Aida, I'm at least happy that we're starting to see some who are willing to question it.
Well, I mean, it's been years of that people have been afraid to speak out because nobody wants to ever seem like they are anti the people of Israel. Like that's it. Somewhere along the line, it's gotten hijacked by this rhetoric that if you criticize the government of Israel and the actions against, the people of Palestine, that you are anti-Semitic. And I think that has stretched across from entertainment to government and all over the place. So I think that it is important for us to have honest, real conversations, and this all lives matter approach to everything that we take sometimes is very harmful to the people who are on the bottom end of the oppression. And so I just think that, our government has been very corrupt in providing arms to people all over the world, destabilizing governments all over the world. And then, when it comes to the brown people of Central America, they do that, they destabilize for coming over here to seek refuge. Israel is a very specific area that has a very specific history. And I think that it is important that we are honest of what's happening in the Middle East. And that is not to say that it is cool for a rocket to be shot into Israel and kill children in Israel either. But yeah. If you understand the conflict and if you've seen the conditions of the people in Palestine and how they're living their lives as a result of the things that have happened, it's not cool.
Exactly. I think pretty much everyone gets that Hamas firing a rocket is bad. What we're fighting for is to get people to realize that a much more expensive, fancier missile killing civilians going the opposite direction is just as bad. And unfortunately, there are not a lot of people up until very recently that were willing to say that. And to the attempt, it's this shield. It's the creation of criticizing particular military tactics becomes anti-Israel. That doesn't make any sense. how many international viewers do we have of TDR that despised virtually everything Donald Trump did? Were they anti-American for not supporting one particular party or one particular politician? We pick and choose very carefully when the identity of a nation gets tied in with the actions of a particular man or a particular party. And that's almost always BS. It's almost always used to silence dissension and critique. That said, we're going to set aside, we might return to this stuff in the A block. There's a note to Sophie a little bit later on, but we are proceeding through the hour. So I'm gonna read a couple of super chats and then we're gonna go on to the B block and see what's going on there. Zane reminds me in the super chat, stay home or go back to work for extra 30K poll. Yeah, maybe, I don't know if Brooke is available in the chat right now on Twitch, but there was a poll put out. It was, would you rather get $30,000 more to your salary or be able to continue working from home rather than go back to the office? Obviously, you have a very different job than most people, but the vast majority said, screw the money, I wanna stay home. And I found that to be mind blowing. $30,000.
Me too.
Really?
People are hard. I'd rather stay in the house.
Okay. I think $30,000 is so much money. Oh my God, I would love $30,000 right now. Anyway, okay, so we'll see if we can get a poll up. Let's see. Bo says, "Hi John, been chuckling as you've been on all the shows for a week, letting us know you're taking 4 days off. Yes, we're a diehard audience. Nonetheless, we'll survive. Enjoy your time away." Thank you, Bo, and you're going to be in great hands. Francesca Fiorentini is going to be a co-host on the show next week while I'm gone. Let's see. Sophia says, I definitely respect Aida the most out of all of the TYT hosts on this issue because she has visited both sides and talked to both. Fair and honest reporting. Thank you for that super chat, Sophia. Okay, let's see. Non-human humanist says, hope everyone is safe. I just started quarantine. My kid has symptoms and was tested positive. We are okay, but I am fed up with Paw Patrol. Well, I hope you and your family are okay. There's other cartoons.
Yeah, no, my niece watches Paw Patrol.
Yeah, I've never seen an episode of it. Is it about cop dogs? Is that what it's about?
Yes.
That's interesting. That seems like,
but you know, kind of. A little, but they don't kill the darker dogs. So
that's good. I'm definitely glad to hear that. Okay, the poll is up at Twitch, so feel free to go take part in that. Okay, let's see. Deathwing over on the TYT.com members activity says, my wife Erica has been listening to TDR since the NSYNC podcast ended. Today is her birthday. Could you wish her a happy birthday? Also, can she claim Boopum's dragon? You can. And happy birthday, Erica. And I have questions. So you got done with your NSYNC podcast, said, I need something that directly replaces this. TDR. That seems odd, but thank you for being a listener. Anyway, over on Twitch, Z Huddle gifted here. What's up? Thank you for that. Carp ODB did as well. Thank you to both of you. Thank you to Here Comes the Tony for subscribing for 8 months on Twitch. Do appreciate that. Let's see. RBF Dragon says, I'm Arab. Mine and my husband's best friend is Jewish. We all agree on this issue, if not the nuances of the religious aspect. Because guess what? This literally has nothing to do with religion. It's straight genocide. Yeah. Fonsu says, Aida, as a Jew, I agree with you. I want them to stop appropriating my ethnicity and culture and profaning it. Yes. I mean, look, it seems like at a bare minimum, we should expect that we can be able to disagree about policy. That's sort of what this show and shows like it are about. That's what society is about. We get to do that. You don't get to shut that down. Anyway, with that said, let's move on to our next bit of news. It was really looking bad yesterday for the proposed commission to look into what happened on January 6th in DC, with virtually every high profile Republican coming out against it. Donald Trump called for it to end. Both Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy turned against it. Tucker Carlson was doing crazed monologues about it. And yet, at least in the House, it was overwhelmingly approved with a vote of 252 to 175. It didn't hurt that the Capitol Police sent a letter to officials shaming them for refusing to stand in support of the cops who protected them back the blue, as they always say. Well, they reluctantly were shamed into sort of backing the blue. But anyway, as of even last night, Republican leadership was still opposing it. And so we didn't know, but it did actually happen, Ida. So at least in the House, I don't know, do you think that enough Republican senators would potentially sign on to this, that it'll actually happen? Do you think that the commission is a good idea in the first place? Where do you stand on this?
So do I think enough Republicans? You know what's funny? I don't know anymore about the Republican Party, because there was a time where, I mean, this year, what we saw on January 6th, we saw people flip from when the stuff immediately happened and the young woman was killed, people that spoke out against it, all of a sudden are now retracting their statement. So I don't know what to think of politicians in general, the Republican Party. What do I think about the? Oh my God, when we have this conversation about law enforcement, I had an Uber driver just ask me yesterday, how do I feel about defunding the police, and how do I think we're gonna survive without having law enforcement? We need that really explains and navigate on in our government, because I think that a lot of people don't really understand the terms and the things of what's going on, and these politicians are hijacking these terms, just happening with Israel, that there are a lot of people who are ill-informed. I think that any step towards making a better way in terms of law enforcement in this country is a positive step, and we have to remember that a lot of people who are in law enforcement are also Black and brown, and a lot of times they are also being held, hostage to a culture that subjects them to violence and being ostracized as well. And I think that we need to really be honest about what is happening with the militarization of law enforcement in our country right now, where we are watching in real time so many things happen. So I hope that there are some people, I've seen some Republicans speak out in a way that made me think maybe they do have, some of them have a conscience and some of them, and that's not to say that I think that all Democrats have a conscience, because a lot of them are negotiable. I just hope that at some point human consciousness kicks in, where they stop thinking about dollars and start thinking about humanity, because we are like running ourselves in the ground on all cylinders, like from the climate, law enforcement to toxic capitalism. Like we really think that we are invincible and immortal. The way that we behave, we act like we're gonna be here forever.
Yeah, I don't understand the way that some people behave. I would include an Uber driver asking about something as contentious as this. Seems like too much. If I'm in an Uber, that's too much. Back off, buddy. Let's talk about the Mandalorian or something. Let's keep it clean. But no, I think what you're saying is very reasonable. My fear is that, like, your expectations for people's rationality, sort of once again grappling with the actual issues that are facing the American people, regardless of what those issues might be. Like, we are so far away from that on some of these Republicans. Like, have you been seeing? Ron Johnson was just on Laura Ingraham last night saying it was almost entirely a peaceful protest. You had the Clyde guy saying they were just tourists. They were just walking in an orderly fashion, even though videos have come out of him cowering behind a guy with a gun and all that. Like, I don't know that any commission is going to get through to either those elected Republicans or their base, who similarly believes that there was nothing wrong with what happened on the 6th. But it does bother me that so many have turned so fully away from reality, that they'll pretend that all the violence and all that is fine.
But they weren't turning themselves away from reality. They were turning themselves towards their presumed constituency and dollars. And, I mean, this is so corrupt. Our government is so corrupt, from the rooter to the tutor, as they say when we talk about a pig. It's just all of it. And when we talk about this particular January 6th incident, I mean, just to see, You know what it is, John? This is where I am now. And I apologize because I was thinking about something else when I was speaking earlier, but I still stand by what I say. When we talk about these people don't have any shame anymore. They are on record. We have videos of them saying one thing and now saying something else.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but that is. So I just feel like, why do we rely on these people to have a consciousness? And I think Republicans and Democrats alike, if you really are like you say about the United States of America being better, why wouldn't you pay attention to people who lie to your face? Those should be the first people you should think about getting out, because at any moment they will switch for whatever is convenient for them and never, ever give a damn about. I wouldn't, even if I was a conservative, and I really am a conservative, and especially these evangelicals, why would you be supporting someone that is a unapologetic liar?
Yeah, and some of these Republican senators, I mean, I guess maybe they learned a lesson from Donald Trump, but like the guy who said the Taurus thing, like he remembers how terrified he was. Like if you've ever like feared that you were about to die, that sticks with you, I think. So he knew, he was terrified that he was gonna be murdered that day. And then a couple months later, he's saying, no, there's no problem at all. Donald Trump wants me to be a part of this lie. So I guess that's what I'll do. That's my career now. I'm gonna pretend that I wasn't absolutely horrified that I'd never see my family again. It's sickening.
Yeah, it's really
okay. Sad. It is. Okay, so we're going to roll right into our next story. Some more lies, actually. Weird. We were able to find 2 liars in one episode of the Damage Report. How weird. Anyway, Sean Hannity has to fill a lot of air every day, and so he doesn't always get his facts exactly right. But there's one lie that he told on his radio show recently, which is basically just a repeat of a smear that was debunked all the way back in 2019 that he's just bringing back. It's yet another reboot for the modern day, and it has to involve his most recent attack against Representative Rashida Tlaib. Here is what he said.
Joe Biden is now keeping his promise to Congresswoman Tlaib. Congresswoman Tlaib's greatest hits include her 2019 outburst that she gets a calming feeling every time she thinks of the Holocaust. Why would Joe Biden be taking consult from her? Because that's virulent anti-Semitism. So you got like a Holocaust lover in Congress advising the president on Israeli policy. You can't have any more ass backwards than this.
Well, he was sort of right at the end. It cannot be more ass backwards than what he just said in that video. He just labeled a congresswoman a lover of the Holocaust. So I have to assume with a charge that extreme, you would want to be sure that what you were saying was grounded in the facts, that you had the right read of what she said. I mean, she had an outburst where she said that she loved the Holocaust. That's really something. But it turns out, no, it's a complete lie. It was shown to be a lie back in 2019. So we want to show you exactly what she said. This is the outburst that the Holocaust lover, as he said. Here is what was actually said by Rashida Tlaib.
Just I think 2 weeks ago or so, we celebrated, it took a moment, I think, in our country to remember the Holocaust. And there's a kind of a calming feeling I always tell folks when I think of the Holocaust and the tragedy of the Holocaust, and the fact that it was my ancestors, Palestinians, who lost their land, and some lost their lives, their livelihood, the human dignity, their existence in many ways have been wiped out, and some people's passport. I mean, just all of it was in the name of trying to create a safe haven for Jews post the Holocaust, post the tragedy and horrific persecution of Jews across the world at that time. And I love the fact that it was my ancestors that provided that, right? In many ways.
Beyond that, just being as far as you can. Okay, let's see if we can clear that way. Beyond that, just being as far away from it. Okay. Beyond that, just being as far away from an outburst as I can conceive of, she said that it was a tragedy and horrific persecution of the Jews. She talked about the common feeling. The common feeling was not that there was a Holocaust, it's that from that tragedy, her ancestors were able to help in some fashion. Look, you might disagree with a little bit of the history potentially, but she is in no way, Aida, saying that she loves the Holocaust. That is an insane, purposefully deceptive, like smear gets thrown around. You bring up any inconvenient thing that a person has said and they call it a smear, even if you're literally just quoting them. That said, if anything is a smear, this is an insane, dishonest smear.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. First of all, when we refer to Sean Hannity from here on out, let us refer to him as television personality Sean Hannity, because we all know that he's not a journalist, and what he does is he does. What do you call it? He sets things on fires for ratings, followers, to sell books, and to capitalize on the people who blindly listen to him or without knowing that he is just doing what he's doing for ratings. He does not do this because he's actually doing research. He is a television personality. He is just like a housewife in Orange County. He's no different than, one of the basketball wives, one of the people from Jersey Shore, and people have to maintain that perspective because that is what he is. He is a television personality. Just because he wears a suit and is at a place called Fox News does not mean that he's a credible source. And a lot of times the things that people you see on those reality shows, because that's what his show is, they do a lot of inflammatory talking because what they want to do is they want to trend, they want to sell books, they want to buy new clothes, they want to have nice houses, that which he has. The other thing that I want to say is I really don't know many people, I don't know any people who celebrate the Holocaust. And for some reason, like I said, this all lives matter approach to just championing the lives and the humanity of Palestinian people somehow becoming this a part of this anti-Semitic agenda is crazy to me. So I don't know what to say. I went to the Holocaust Museum in Israel. I sat in the Children's Museum, and I was escorted out because it was horrible to see just pictures of babies that were killed during the Holocaust.
Yeah,
and to be able to hold the space for these Palestinian children who lost their families, who've lost their lives. Imagine like if there was a place where they called out all the names of all the Black children that died in the Holocaust as a result of the transatlantic slave trade, all of it. It just makes me so upset that so many children have had to lose their lives over the evil of grown-ups. And so I will say that we need to make sure that we properly frame the words that come out of the mouths of these television personalities while they try to get ratings for their reality shows, and not allow those people to drive conversations about the real things that are happening in the world. And I will continue to urge people to seek information from credible sources, because those people like that will drive you to hate and live when you are surrounded constantly by people that you hate and you think hate you.
Yeah. Well, and we have these personalities that use their platforms to try to drive people to hate others based on lies. So, I mean, I don't know how many people listen to his radio show. I imagine it's a lot, probably. It's a lot of people. And I imagine not 1 in 500 is gonna go be like, wow, Holocaust lover, that seems really extreme. Wouldn't that have hurt her in the primary? Oh, I gotta check into that. I don't think many will do that, unfortunately. And it wasn't difficult, it's there. As I said, this was already fact checked and adjudicated back in 2019. But the damage at that point was already done. And by the way, I love this little throw. Like, so Liz Cheney, we've been pointing out that she was right on January 6th, but she's also terrible. Let's give you an example of how terrible she is. Back in 2019, she put out a press release titled "Statement from House GOP Conference Chair Liz Cheney on Representative Tlaib saying the Holocaust gives her a quote calming feeling." So she was a part of the lie. Sean Hannity, we have like no expectations of. Liz Cheney, I guess we shouldn't have any expectations of her too. She called the remarks sickening and accused Ms. Tlaib and other Democrats of spreading vile anti-Semitism. When she said that the Holocaust was a tragedy and terrible persecution of Jews worldwide. Mr. Scalise, leader in the Republican Party in the House as well, followed suit, calling her comments twisted and disgusting. Then Donald Trump, not even gonna read it, but he got involved in it, basically just trying to get as many of their followers to hate and fear Rashida Tlaib as much as possible. At the time, she tweeted, "Policing my words, twisting and turning them to ignite vile attacks on me will not work. All of you who are trying to silence me will fail miserably. I will never allow you to take my words out of context to push your racist and hateful agenda. The truth will always win." And unfortunately, 2 years later, almost on the anniversary, they're trying to do it again because they hate her and they fear her, and especially they don't like the fact that she represents a group that they care nothing about in Congress, that she'll give speeches supporting human rights, calling for less civilian deaths. They hate that about her. And so Sean Hannity, spreading insane, obvious lies. But that's not the only one. Are you ready to move in 1 second to another set of attacks? We're gonna read just a couple of super chats before we move on to this. Zane says, "My little buddy is 3 today. Happy birthday, Zandon." Happy birthday, that's awesome. Andrew Grew says, exactly, thank you. Andrew Grew says, "With a baby due in 6 weeks, I'd take that extra 30K in less than a heartbeat. That money means a home, good school, no medical debt." Yes, although as people have been pointing out, if you have a really long commute, I don't know, maybe wear and tear on the car and gas and all of that, maybe it actually is cheaper to just stay home. Anyway, Mellybean says, "Love it when Ida's on, sending excellent weekend vibes from Northern Ontario. Enjoy your staycation next week, John. We'll miss you, but I'm glad you're gonna get some rest." Thank you, Mellybean, I appreciate that. Lawrence Wells says, "As much as progressive legislators get flack for not doing enough, I am grateful you have legislators that respond to you at all, standing up for the right causes. Got my green shirt, the Green Dragon shirt. Woohoo! Thank you, Lawrence, for getting one of those. I'm a big fan. We've also got the Legalize It shirt available at Shop TYT. And by the way, Lena Peak says, "It's my birthday. Here's a birthday gift from me to the TDR community." Lena, happy birthday. I prefer that super chat to the ones you normally send on Wednesdays. Thank you. And Felicia says, "We love you, Rashida. Aloha from Hawaii." Yes, there are a few people in this country that have gotten as much unrelenting lies and attacks as Rashida Tlaib. I believe we have one though, and we're gonna transition to talking about her now, actually. Representative Ilhan Omar has been unapologetic in calling for a ceasefire, for an end to the ever-increasing number of Palestinian civilians that have been killed in the most recent violence between Israel and Palestine. And what does that get turned into when lobby groups like AIPAC decide to attack her? Well, it looks something like this. We have a tweet from Jeremy Slevin who had this, with AIPAC now running ads with Ilhan Omar's face next to Hamas rockets. If this isn't blatant Islamophobia, I don't know what is, but you can decide for yourself. Because the meme says, when Israel targets Hamas, Representative Omar calls it an act of terrorism. And they have a picture of her with Hamas rockets being fired. I mean, I don't think it's a huge leap to really understand what the association they're trying to make there, where she is apparently fine with Hamas and Israel the true terrorists, and that's it. It's as simple as that. That's what she actually believes they would have you believe, Ida.
People spend so much time creating all this stuff to demonize these women. That be spent to making America better for the American people. And it's just so much effort that goes into, I mean, it feels very, very violent. Like they really want to just entice someone to bring harm to these women. If Ilhan Omar has always been very vocal about caring for the lives of Muslim people, caring for the lives of people in Palestine, and caring for the people in America, not Muslim, from Palestine, and fighting for health care for the average American. She stands on a platform that calls for and respect to people in this country that they don't get from the current government. I just think it's interesting that these women of color, Black women, are always demonized when they are standing for what's right for all people. And this is no different, and like I said, people hijack, and a lot of these people who really are bigots that you hear in government who are pro-Israel, a lot of them are pro-Israel for economic reasons and political reasons, not because they actually give two damns about the 18-year-olds that got to carry the burden of taking a machine gun to go kill somebody or another kid. There is this woman who lives on the Gaza border in Israel, and she, on this wall, she has these tiles that she's created, and people come create tiles calling for peace. Who had 3 children, and all 3 of them had to serve. And so she said, when anything happens, my kids gotta go. And I wanna keep reminding people of this, because when we talk about these wars and these conflicts, take into consideration who has to carry out the justice. It's not the cool politician with the nice suit who has security and a nice car riding around town who's doing it. It's people's children are going out there to fight these wars that they have nothing, they don't stand to benefit from. They are only being brainwashed into believing that they're fighting for their freedom, and they really don't understand that it's the other people's freedom who's being compromised. So when I hear Ilhan and I hear Rashida and I hear AOC and I hear Bernie, finally people speaking up and being able to take into consideration that yes, the people that live in Israel are human beings, but so are the people in Palestine. Those are people, and even if the government is corrupt and shady, the people are the ones paying the price. And it doesn't surprise me that they've been trying to get rid of these people, because they don't care about the fact where these people stand on this conflict. John, you know that they feel these people are dangerous because they're coming for big pharma. They want health care for all people. They want they want law enforcement that's fair and just to Black people and people of color. They are calling on all of the things that target their wallets, and that any opportunity that they get to take these women down and these people down, they use it because these people are a threat to their pocket. And we need to keep that in perspective.
Yeah. Because they speak up, they speak effectively, they refuse to be silenced. I do have to say, I'm glad that we've gotten a couple of years into this, but there's obviously so much insanity and so much hate against these women that, I'm just constantly worried for them. There was we'll return to this in a second, but there was this breaking news story that this right winger put out about AOC, how she'd parked her Tesla. And obviously that's a really weird thing to label as breaking news. But when I saw that story, I thought, oh God, she's just driving around. I don't want her running into Whole Foods or whatever, because I'm terrified some insane Tucker Carlson fan is gonna see her and do something crazy. Or with Rashida Tlaib, or with Ilhan Omar, or God knows soon it'll be for Cori Bush. And God help us if Nina Turner becomes a representative, because it's gonna be the same thing. I'm just so worried that they're out there and they're not like you think, oh, they're representatives, they're surrounded by bodyguards and everything. No, that's not really how it works. And so I've been very terrified about that. Now, really fast, I did want to remind you of, let me read what Ilhan Omar said in response to that ad, which her office is calling to be taken down. She says, desperate and deeply offensive. The rights of Palestinians and all people yearning for freedom and self-determination will not be ignored, and no level of harassment will silence me or the millions of people demanding peace and justice. That said, I want to take you back to 2019 when that same group, AIPAC, was forced to apologize and remove at least 4 Facebook ads saying that Omar, Tlaib, and Representative Betty McCollum, one of the few congressional critics of Israel's treatment of Palestinians, pose a threat, quote, maybe more sinister than ISIS.
Wow.
So that finally went too far, and they did put out an apology, but they tried to run that ad like that's what they were doing, saying that these representatives were more dangerous than ISIS itself. So maybe they've dialed it back slightly, just putting her face next to Hamas rockets, knowing full well how the American people and conservatives would respond to that. But yeah, this is disgusting. Facebook needs to get rid of these ads this time around too. I think we probably agree on that. Okay, so we've got 12 minutes. I think we probably have time for both of these stories. So why don't we roll directly into this very different bit of news. Following on from earlier this week, the news that the Supreme Court was going to be taking up a extremely controversial, to say the least, anti-abortion bill. Texas now has some amazing legislation. Greg Abbott signed a so-called heartbeat ban abortion bill. The name doesn't mean anything. It's nonsense. It's not really about a heartbeat, but they use that to try to manipulate you emotionally into supporting it. It would bar most abortions as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy. Now, that sounds extreme. It sounds crazy. It's actually worse than that, because it's not really 6 weeks after pregnancy. It's not, oh, you have 6 weeks to discover that you're pregnant. It's like literally like a couple of weeks after detectable pregnancy. So effectively, it means that there will be no abortions in Texas with this new legislation. Now, that said, as terrible as that is, the way that they rolled it out may be even worse. So here's a bit of video of them announcing this legislation.
Our Creator endowed us with the right to life, and yet millions of children lose their right to life every year because of abortion. In Texas, we work to save those lives. And that's exactly what the Texas legislature did this session. They worked together on a bipartisan basis to pass a bill that I'm about to sign that ensures that the life of every unborn child who has a heartbeat will be saved from the ravages of abortion. Now, we're about to make it law.
People in rural Texas, yeah. So they got a whole bunch of white guys, and then they got their like 6 women, and they clustered them in the middle. The only thing that would have made that imagery more perfect for today would be if they dressed in Wives Blue or in Handmaid's Red. But they did get a couple of women to put in the center of the shot as they effectively outlaw abortion entirely in one of the biggest and most populous states in the entire country, Ida.
So I wanted to share this. Carlos Chapman, I don't know if you know who she is. She's a law professor at Washington and Lee University, made a very interesting point about abortion. She said, if a fetus is a person at 6 weeks pregnant, is that when the child support starts? Is that also when you can't deport the mother because she's carrying a US citizen? Can I insure a 6-week fetus and collect if I miscarry? Just trying to figure this out here. Where should we go? All in. And I think it's interesting that we see these people who, these men who are talking about how much they care about children in a state where the education system, the public education system, is struggling so poorly, so much, and I mean, we're all furious. We get furious when we hear these men continuously talking about how passionately they feel about abortion until one of their mistresses becomes pregnant, and then we have to find the story later about how they flew her to another state to get the abortion or whatever. It's just sickening, and it's tiring, and it's hypocrisy, and they continue to play on the American people's emotions and feelings, knowing that good and well that this has nothing to do with their moral ground. It really has to do with economics, politics, oppression, white supremacy, and all of the above.
Yeah, every one of those creepy inbred dudes is gonna get abortions for people they want if they want them. They'll get it. They're just trying to make it more difficult for people in Texas. And by the way, as has been pointed out many times, no anti-abortion bill actually bans abortion. It only bans safe medical abortions. The abortions still happen. They're just way more dangerous. And the Republicans in that room are apparently fine with that. By the way, all the heartbeat stuff, I mean, we've gone over this ad nauseum, but it is total BS. It has nothing to do with a heartbeat. They're not detecting a heart. First of all, if they were to, there's no moral significance to that. It is just manipulation, but they're not even doing that. It is the detecting of a faint electrical signal from a few cells that will someday develop into a heart. It's not a heart that is beating in the chest of a fully formed human being. It is absolute emotional nonsense that they're trying to base this on. And under Roe v. Wade and Supreme Court precedent, none of this has any chance of succeeding. That said, we have an insane Supreme Court filled with religious zealots. It's a 7-2 Supreme Court effectively at this point, potentially on this issue, or close to it. And it is a reminder, as how many times do we say, when people tell you, don't worry about the Supreme Court, don't let that affect you, that's not a reason to vote one way or the other. Well, I don't know, for some issues it's sort of important. For some issues it has an effect. They didn't pass this bill thinking, we just want to send a signal, it's gonna get shut down by the Supreme Court. No, they want the Supreme Court to take it up, and they want the Supreme Court to eliminate Roe v. Wade entirely. They might not even need this one at this point, but this is just another thing that they're sending out there to try to get it taken out because they believe they have a crazy enough Supreme Court, and they might be right, Ida.
They do. They have a handmaid on the Supreme Court. So, and that's not me like projecting or saying it, this or me trying to be funny. This is actually belonged to a right or a sect that refer to women as handmaids. There's so much that is how these the follow them emotionally, continuously trying to drive fear into them, telling them that someone is coming for something that belongs to them and they need their guns, knowing good and well the government will shut all of those people down if they have to, and their guns. And then telling people that abortion is a really big problem and that it's all patriarchy, it's all of it rolled up in one. And they have a lot of women who are being emotionally moved into supporting these movements. And as we watch on The Handmaid's Tale, it all doesn't end very well for the women who continuously support these men who are trying to oppress them. But to think about the Supreme Court, Donald Trump was successful, and the people who enable him were very successful in putting, a man who has accusations of sexual assault, and you saw them demonize the woman. But these are the people who care about women, right? They're the ones who care about women, they care about children, but you see the way that they treated them. And then, I don't know. It's turning at all cylinders, and humanity and America looks really dark right now in terms of the things that our government is doing. While all of this is happening, the conditions of the average American are not improving. And that for me is why I'm like, this is all bogus and malarkey. They keep us distracted. We're arguing about abortion and guns and immigration, and we lost 500,000 people to COVID. It's just gross.
And still increasing. And one last thing on this, I'm gonna go to this last graphic. By the way, I just want you to bear this in mind. as you continually hear from Republicans that Joe Biden isn't being sufficiently bipartisan, that, after they lost the House and the Senate and the White House and the American people absolutely despise them, Biden should still give them everything. Well, according to a recent survey of Texans by the University of Texas and the Texas Tribune, about 40% of respondents in Texas identified as pro-life, 41% as pro-choice. And yet, even though slightly more identify as pro-choice, they have now the most extreme anti-abortion legislation in the country. There's your unity. There's your bipartisanship. Let's just bear that in mind. Anyway, that said, we have very little time, and I want to make sure that we get this last story in. It is too important to miss, so we are going to roll immediately into this last one. I want to warn you that we are about to show you some video that is absolutely devastating and brutal. And it involves a man named Ronald Greene, a barber who back in 2019 failed to pull over for an unspecified traffic violation and was involved in a chase with police officers. When the chase ended, it was an absolutely devastating instance of police brutality that led to his family filing a federal wrongful death lawsuit, alleging that the troops brutalized him, left him beaten, bloodied, and in cardiac arrest before covering up the cause of his death. Now, as I said, this is all the way back in 2019. And for basically the entire time from then to now, Louisiana officials rebuffed repeated calls to release body cam footage of what actually happened, to give more details about what led to the 49-year-old's death. Initially, they told his family, and I want you to remember this as we move on, that he died on impact after crashing into a tree during the chase. They told his family that. Later, state police released a one-page statement acknowledging only that he struggled with troopers and then died on his way to the hospital. Well, now finally, a little bit of the video was acquired by the AP, and they've put out a bit that we're going to show you. But as we have said, this is very rough and difficult to watch. But that said, here's a bit of what happened.
I'm scared. I'm just scared. Get out of the box. I'm scared.
Mr. Greene was, to some degree, even though he had just finished leading police officers on a lengthy and a high-speed chase, his inclination at that particular point was to acquiesce to what the officers want.
Let me see your hands. Put your hands behind your back, bitch. Give me your fucking hands. Put your hands behind your back. Taser. Put your hands behind your back. Behind your back. You're about to get it again if you don't put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. I'm sorry.
What's problematic for me is that Mr. Greene is now left on the ground, on his stomach, handcuffed in a prone position. And officers are trained throughout the United States that once there's a struggle of this nature, the individual's handcuffed, that you need to push him off onto his side or get him in a sitting position so you can allow that breathing to be unimpeded by his own body weight.
So what you just saw there was cops pulling someone out of their car and then murdering him. And then lying to the family. I can't even imagine, on top of the unimaginable loss of a family member, they said that he died in a car crash. Then eventually they said that he struggled. They knew for 2 years that he was killed, that they took him out of the car, repeatedly tased him, and beat him to death, basically. And that's what we see there. And even now, they're declining to comment on the contents of the video. I sort of understand why they really wouldn't want to say much. They said, sure, it's awful but lawful. And they didn't even do an administrative investigation into the death for well over a year. The mother says they murdered him. It was set out, it was planned. He didn't have a chance. He wasn't going to live to tell about it. You hear him screaming, crying out, saying how scared he was. And they just kept tasing him and kept beating him, dragged him by his ankle cuffs across the street.
Yeah, It's lawful, right? Because these people never get in trouble for doing this. And when they do, it's a rarity. How many people have been killed since George Floyd? It is trauma porn at this point. Everywhere we turn, there's another story. For some people, it's hits and views. And for other people, it's triggering and it's trauma. You have to watch a reflection of yourself being lynched and knowing that it could be you. Because it doesn't matter if you're 15, it doesn't matter if you're 12, it doesn't matter if you are a barber, it doesn't matter if you work at a school cafeteria. It doesn't matter if you're a man, it doesn't matter if you're a woman, it doesn't matter if you're transgender. We can find a person to fill every column in this country that have been unlawfully killed by law enforcement. And disproportionately Black people are affected, but Latinos are killed, Latinx people are killed at record numbers as well. And a lot of white poor people also being killed by the cops whose names you'll never know, because the media is racist and they know how to compartmentalize these things, because they dare not want to start saying everybody who's getting killed by the cops. And we start seeing all the faces, because that could very well call for some solidarity and some unity amongst the people who are at the bottom. But it's disheartening to watch. It is disgusting, it's cowardly. They're in a position of power. And it just continues to support the findings that the FBI had about the growth and the increase in numbers of people who belong to white supremacist groups being part of law enforcement. Yep. It's a serious, serious problem that we continue to ignore and people continue to dispute. But that's a white supremacist that is not just murdering a Black man, but also bragging about it later.
Yeah, bragging about it. Like, I don't understand why. Like, it took so long for it to become relatively common for people to acknowledge that it seems like an issue that if you're gonna have a certain percentage of the population that for whatever reason really wants to kill someone, they can become criminals, or in theory, they can become cops and then wait a little while and they'll be allowed to kill people. That seems like an issue. It seems like something we should probably look into, but despite a full year of protests and all these different groups and individuals trying to draw attention to it, we now have a Democratic president, and maybe they'll do something eventually. Maybe there'll be a bill or something. No priority. And in the meantime, how many Ronald Greenes will there be?
Quite a few. And let's not forget the children. Let's not forget the women. We talk about this presidency, and we talked about it during the election. We were voting for the lesser of two evils because we were damned if we do, damned if we didn't. But the truth is, President Biden has shown that he is going to be who he's been. And though there have been some steps that have been taken in a direction that makes us feel like things are getting better, who are they getting better for? Not Black people and impoverished communities that have to deal with cops that don't see them as human beings. Not poor Latin people who are being terrorized, and immigrants that come from all over the world that are not just from Latin America that are being terrorized by ICE. So who is it getting better for? You guys, a lot of people want to talk about taxes and fight about economics. People in certain areas of this country are just fighting for their humanity and quite honestly, I'm really tired of seeing. It makes me feel bad. It takes away my, as the mother of a Black son and a Black daughter, it just makes me feel like hopeless, and most people find argument points to make in support of this stuff. And that is it's just very disheartening.
Yeah. Well, obviously rough story to end on, Aida. But as always, appreciate your perspective, and I know that the audience does as well. and all that you had to say about this and other stories we covered. And I want to thank you, especially I know that you're busy, you're on the road. Thank you for taking time out to join us as always. It's a pleasure having you on.
You know, I love you and I love the people who watch and support this show. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. And by the way, so I know that you're touring right now. Where can people find out where your shows are going to be? Maybe they could go take a look.
So if you follow me on Twitter or Instagram at Funny AIDA, it is in the link. And tonight I am at LOL in San Antonio. I'm doing what we're here for. You bring people some laughs in the midst of all of the things that are happening. Just trying to bring some joy across to a lot of people who are suffering right now. So LOL in San Antonio, and I'll be at Mohegan Sun next weekend, the 27th through the 29th in Connecticut. Thank you, John.
Awesome. I've actually been there. That would be cool to see there. Okay, well, thank you and have a good one. And thank you to the audience. Appreciate y'all being here. We are less than an hour out from our monthly live Q&A available to our tier 3 members. So consider becoming one if you'd like to take part in that. We got just a couple more minutes. I want to read a couple of your comments before then. M became a tier 1 YouTube member. Thank you for that, M. Do appreciate that. Vygotsky says, how many of the dudes in that room have paid for abortions? Enough that it should be a massive scandal. Maybe we'll dispatch Ken Klippenstein, see if we can find out. Anyway, over on Twitch, Melissa subscribed for the 7th month. Z Huddle for the 4th says, thanks for keeping me sane, DJ Lunchbox. By the way, TYT sent me the DJ Lunchbox shirt. That is the most ridiculous shirt by far that we've ever produced. If we made one of just Jank's drawing of me, it would be less crazy because at least you wouldn't know what it was. I cannot believe they made that shirt. Almost Handsome subscribed for the 11th month, says started from the Bezos, now we're here. Thank you for that. Tib Tab Tub hit 4 months. Esau Saber 4 as well. Bricklayer 4 months ago today. It was a big day for TDR apparently, or for TYT. Evie hit 9 months. Thank you for that. By the way, Cypher Shadow Dragon says, John, I know you don't have kids because there may be other cartoons, but the screaming and crying to get them to switch cartoons is not worth it, LOL. Speaking there about Paw Patrol, I'm sure. And that's the thing, like it seems like there should be some solution to this, but that is just ignorance on my part speaking. So maybe someday I will see. Okay. Thank you everybody for joining us. Lots more to come, including that live Q&A a little bit later on. I'm gonna be leading both the first and the second hour of the Young Turks with Cenk Uygur, so we've got that to look forward to as well. But until then, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and we'll see you soon.